So today we have an amazing day in front of us. We have four distinguished speakers from the ranges of mobility, transportation, commercial transportation as such, and we'll be talking about what's in it for future, or trying to see how we are trying to look in the past right now, see what's happening in this current world, and then try to see how we can unfold it in the future as such too. One more thing I always do is trying to bring something I did in the last month. I really had the pleasure to read this book, All 13. It's an incredible book. Means I do not know. You might remember 2019, no, 2018 or 17. There were 13 soccer kids trapped in Thai caves all the way back there. This book actually tells each and every day of their grueling incidents in the way how they surpassed the, I would say, the human spirit. It's an amazing story. It's a real story. All 13 came out alive, and just to see what they went through and how they happened, it really makes you wonder about the indomitable spirit of humankind, and the entire village works together. So if you have a chance, if you have some time, and if you still like to read some books, that's a really good one. I can add the link to that book later in the chat panel as such. So we have four speakers in front of us. We'll start with our first one. I see Thomas Gould right there on the stage. Thomas, you want to?
Hi.
Yep, there you are. Unmute and video yourself. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I like the
Sure.
I like the bowling club you are in. That's a great movie right there.
Yeah, that's been a favorite of mine for really
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you have somehow similarities in how you see right now with the character on your list.
Yeah. So I'm taking over for Donnie there. But thanks for including me today. So
sure, absolutely.
Hopefully I can live up to the your introduction. So
you will always live up to, and you will go, you will hit it beyond the park. I have complete confidence in that. How are you been doing? We have been talking after a long time. How is life? What's new in your part?
Life is good. With our industry has, it seems like one thing after another in the automotive world lately. Going into last year and the disruptions COVID created, and everyone having to learn how to manage through what we do by not being able to collaborate. I mean, design is such a highly collaborative effort generally, and not having that kind of face-to-face ability to talk has been a little challenging, but I think we've gotten through that. But just when you think 2020 is over and everything's okay, then we have chip shortages. We're in the middle of foam poly, and we as a seating company, we use a lot of foam, and we have got a big foam polyol shortage going on right now, trying to sort our way through that. And then, who knows what's next. So it's, but that all being said, we push on, and some of the coolest things I think I've ever been involved with, we're working on right now in terms of new innovations, new product development, and really those taking hold and moving them forward. So,
no, that will be amazing, and we will looking forward to see when you share some of those. I know most of us know about you, as they read your bio before coming to the let's say the VDC as such. You have been tremendously active in the world of automotive earlier, let's say Johnson Controls, and now Adient. But let's go back a little bit further. Means how did entire the thing of your industrial design start?
With me,
Yeah.
that's a good question. A lot of people have these great stories about being in the garage wrenching on cars with their dad and that sort of thing. I did some of that, but probably always having a grandfather who was a commercial art director. He was always inspiring me, and I always loved the kind of visual communication side of things. And one day he hands me this book. He says, "Oh, this is a book produced by U.S. Steel, and it's got some really cool paintings in here." And I opened it up, and there's all these beautiful Sid Mead images in there. And this is probably in the kind of mid 70s. He gave me that book, and I'm like, I was so geeked about it and thankfully in high school had a counselor who knew what industrial design was, and he said, that's what you want to go do. So it's been quite a journey. What I do and how I touch design has changed over the years. I've been at this for about 32, almost 32 years. So, or actually over 32, but 32 with this company.
That's simply amazing. 32 years is a long time, and I'm glad that something that you saw that happened to be Sid Mead somehow created a kind of a moonshot for you to come and join industrial design as such. Talking about Sid Mead, I think we were talking about him just day before yesterday. So I think most of not everybody might be knowing, but Sundberg-Ferar is the second longest design studio in the nation, 88 years. And Thomas Sid Mead had contracted for us in 60s and 70s.
Oh, that's yeah.
And it was like maybe we knew that, and then we actually went to our archives. So most of our archives we donated to Henry Ford Museum because they keep it really good and nice. So last time when this was 5-6 years ago, he was in Michigan, so we took him to the Henry Ford, and there are plenty of drawings which were not signed, but obviously they were Sid Mead. But we want to make sure we brought him, and he said like, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. And even his first doodles are just amazing. The gesture that he captures in anything he does is or he used to do was simply amazing. So Sid Mead, excuse me, always becomes a beacon for everybody. So let's before we go into the world of pure automotive design, apart from let's say your passion for automotive, what do you do for fun, Thomas? How do you keep yourself engaged on weekends? I think last time when we met, this was a couple of years ago, you said you're trying to explore, I hope I'm right, a completely new street every day because you enjoyed walking. Are you still keeping that up, or?
No, I covered the whole city I live in. Managed to get through quite a few in the other streets. Still get out. Just being outdoors is just a wonderful thing. And over the past year, it's been even a little more important just to get out, get a little fresh air, get a little bit of what is it, vitamin E from the sun and that sort of thing. So we, my family really is the biggest, I guess, hobby of mine. I've got 4 kids, enjoying where they're at in life. I've got 2 that are still in college, 2 that are kind of off on their own down in Texas. So spending time with them is really probably how I really like to spend my time. So
actually, many people are saying that because of COVID, they're getting to spend, at least last year, more time with their kids, and good, bad, or otherwise, it's a completely different experience for people to enjoy. I would say the experience with each other in the same house. So it's always good that we got some bonding time.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me hand the reins over to you. You want to share your screen and take us away and show us something a little bit about your latest thoughts?
Yeah. So what I wanted to share today, let's see, make sure I get the, I want to make sure you're seeing my screen first. Is that showing up?
Not yet.
Okay. How about now?
Yep.
Okay, great. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things we went through just as at a design level, talking about shifting paradigms in mobility. So what you can see here is the demonstrator property that we built a couple of years ago called, we called it Clover, just as a kind of working name, and it kind of stuck. And you'll kind of see why in a little bit. And I'm just going to blast through a few slides here. And if we want to get into questions, I can come back later. But I wanted to really just talk about what drove this, this design activity. Because we've done lots of show cars. You can see this is just a few of them. But in the past few years, we really saw a shift in terms of what the potential needs may be out there for automotive seating. And that's what Adient, that's what we do at Adient. We make automotive seating. And when we took a look at all the converging trends, and any good design project has a some fair amount of research that goes into it to get you started. But this kind of convergence of autonomous and shared electric vehicles really had a big potential to create some different paradigms for us. And when we talk about autonomous vehicles, there was so much buzz at the time, and I'm rewinding you back right now to kind of the 2017, 2018 timeframe when a lot of this was being developed. And there was so much news out there about all these ADAS systems, radars, and whatnot that would help the car drive itself. And that it was a huge leap of technology and worthy of all the news coverage it was getting. But what we wanted to kind of take a look at was what happens, to us. And I love my car. I love driving. I take routes into work that are kind of interesting drives. And what happens when the car is driving itself? How do we take that joy of that experience and move it into something that's going to be equally interesting, if not, but certainly not the same. So, as we've looked at the evolution of how things have changed over the years, that switch to the joy of getting that time back seemed to be the clearest place we could take a look at from our experience model that we wanted to build. And so here's just kind of a quick chart where we look at the difference between the machine-driven vehicle versus us driving, but also a big change in terms of the owner of the vehicle, and moving towards a shared economy. And when we take a look at that trajectory, we've done a lot of work that kind of looked into both parts of that sphere and wanted to really understand from a design standpoint, what does that mean? We looked out in the industry, and some of these are actually much more recent than the property I'm going to talk you through, but there were so many different seating configurations. And again, as a seating manufacturer, what happens to us when we're thinking about seats differently because the function of the vehicle is now different, and how does that equate to an experience that's good or bad for us when we use these vehicles? So, and kind of with a lot of these, and when we equate this to other industries, we start seeing this kind of convergence of function into a little more of a command center approach within the seat, especially in some of these situations where the instrument panel might be minimized or in some cases gone, depending on which vehicle we're looking at. And but we also know that there's a variety of different approaches to mobility. Even if you look at the bus and train and aircraft seats, those aren't necessarily just the coach seats or bus seats. So we want to understand that. So we built out some different design considerations, and I'll kind of go through these to explain what each one of these meant in terms of how we approached it from a design standpoint. And again, we tried to stay focused on the consumer and what they were going to get out of this at the end of the day, because ultimately that's where we want to go. So the first piece was really looking at the consumer experience within the vehicle and what that would mean. And we also learned that within a shared environment, the trip duration was going to be a big factor in terms of the need statements that were being driven out of the design briefs. So shorter duration, and we kind of cut it around 20 minutes, and that can be debated if that's really where it is. But people would behave differently, or we anticipate a different behavior between long and short duration trips. But we also know that there's a lot of different people who would be using these. People who are just using it to get around a city. And because again, a big part of the research pointed towards the growth in the urban environment. And again, some of the things I'm going to talk about today are 2017, 2018 research, and things have changed since then. We also want to take a look at people with diminished capabilities. This new demographic that could now be have the ability to access mobility in a new way, and then just family and group environments and how those demographics would take a look at that. And a big part of that was just getting the time back. So if I'm not driving the car, And I talk about how much I enjoy driving the car, but if I'm stuck in traffic and just sitting there, really just making sure the car isn't going off the road, I have to admit, it's like I'm not getting as much pleasure out of that. But the ability to get that time back and be able to do something with it, whether it's I'm getting caught up with something at work, just relaxing, enjoying some entertainment, or enjoying the people I'm traveling with, either way, we get that time back and can really utilize that to its fullest if the vehicle is able to take care of our needs for the driving. But when we talk about some of the shared aspects of that, and we think that there's going to be a big focus around shared mobility for AVs when those do finally come online, mostly because of the expense of the systems that it takes to get a car to drive itself. And when we talk about especially shared environments like an Uber pool, where you might not know the people in the vehicle with you, that the privacy issue may become a bigger part of the equation. So we actually, this image in the upper left here is probably the best one to kind of take a look at in terms of some of the solutions we were trying to drive, because you could always do things like we did little dividers and we played with things like that in the past. But this one was really unique because what we did is we took the occupants and we angled them at 15 degrees. So you're always kind of really just facing the center of the vehicle. So if you don't know the people you're sitting directly across from, you're not really directly across from them anymore. You're really focusing on the middle. And we had screens that would be in the back. So if you wanted to watch a movie or sporting event, anything like that, the entertainment would be back there and really wouldn't be creepy to be staring across from someone you don't know. We also used some small design features like a little fold-out table that could either encourage a sense of community within that vehicle or a little bit of a divider. And even down to other things that it would help with privacy. So there's a sound system with noise canceling headrests that would really give you that kind of personal sound. So if you are watching a movie, really you're the only one hearing it. You can make phone calls through this and again, maintain a level of privacy through that. So, but we also, we looked at other vehicles that were out there that had more bus-like seating, and we thought, okay, is that really our future? And when we look at things like the airline industry and other adjacent industries, we do see differences. And we wanted to go with a seating setup that was more of that kind of premium economy type seat. So these seats do rock back and forth, but there's no recline like a traditional seat. So there's a lot of different comfort parameters that can be added through just a simple kinematic like this. They're controlled through a unique control module that's built into the seat. And then even just, some of the convenience features like a vending system that could be a part of the vehicle. But we also realized that those weren't, the consumers are not the end, they're the end user, but not the owner of the vehicle. So what happens now that we're designing for the service provider as a solution set? And we took a look at, okay, how does that break down between, the shared usage versus, the shared versus owned, but also wanting to understand what are the needs of the service providers. So when we break down those consumer needs, those created different solution sets that were required. But we also looked at the service provider needs, and there was convergence of a lot of those in the middle, but some of those are very unique. And some of those unique things were everything from maximizing the use of the vehicle over time. So in peak loads, when a vehicle might be out on the streets, moving people around during what was used to be called rush hour. Some of us remember that, but moving people around at those times. But then in the middle of the night, the service provider is still going to want to get revenue from their investments. So how do you use that for, not really it says storage here, but how do you manage cargo with that? So the kind of picture of how the vehicle might be used during the day would change. And so we wanted to make sure we had solutions that would adapt to that. But also when we think about the vehicle itself, and the consumer's experience in there, we don't own the vehicle. We don't, we're not going to be as careful about maintaining it. So how does that design help the service provider maintain a clean and safe environment in the vehicle? So we had everything from removable foam and trim modules. So if something got damaged or soiled, it could be easily taken out. But then using design, some of the different technologies to design the parts differently so they could be used in a unique way, even down to, it's hard to see in the image, but there's no bite line really in the seat. And so even if you drop something out of the vehicle, out of your pocket, it doesn't have a bite line to get lost in. It makes the surfaces very cleanable. We looked into, for some vehicles, we looked at antimicrobial finishes on these, so fungal, anti-soil. So that helped us a lot. And then the different fabric constructions. And we kind of focused around fabrics a little bit just to kind of warm things up a little bit for people. We wanted them to feel at home in that environment. And then personalization is always a big thing. And how do you personalize something you don't own? But we designed a few things into this where we try to get ourselves a little closer to a personal experience. So when you set up your ride, you're also picking your seat. Some of these seats in this vehicle do face backwards, and for some people that's a big no-no because the motion sickness problem comes into play very quickly. So you choose your seat, it lights up your specific color, it makes its adjustments immediately to your posture and how you like to sit, as well as climate features. So those things are all kind of programmed in, and you carry those with you either through an app or your personal settings. And how do you do something like this? Because we can't do this on our own. So we wanted to make sure we developed an ecosystem partners to get that done. So we worked with LG, Omron, which is now Nidec, Gentherm, and Autoliv to kind of develop these solutions. And again, this is the same chart you saw before, but we couldn't do all of this on our own. So you can kind of see some of the how the partnerships really transpired in giving us what we felt was a thorough design. So what's happening now? Things have changed since we built this. More and more. When we built this, we thought we were going to get late to the party, but now it really looks like the horizon for autonomous in particular is pushing out. And depending on what's triggering us, those keep pushing out. Coronavirus has had a huge impact in terms of the people's want to jump into anything that's shared. So the companies like Uber, Lyft, Didi are having a really rough time getting through this. So I wanted to just kind of blast through that and give everybody a general idea of how we approach design a little differently for this project. And with that, Jeevak, I don't know if you had any thoughts or anything you wanted to.
Oh, that is fantastic. I appreciate the way you are laying out the landscape of the things you do, or how I would say the approach and the methodology to solve problems. Means there are questions coming in, and I have a couple of questions too. Means it's amazing to see, as you said, a single product cannot be designed in isolation or a single entity. There has to be an ecosystem of partners. Amazing to see so many partners over there. But how does a project like this with half a dozen partners start? I mean, do some of you get together, or does an OEM take out a need of how it's going to happen? How do you get these people to play with each other?
In some ways, we started out, we kind of drove the project from an Adient standpoint, and we had a lot of the groundwork was already kind of laid out. And we had, in a company like Autoliv that does restraint systems, we're already at work on multiple other channels with them on how do you keep people safe in with restraints inside of a vehicle. So they were naturally just integrated in. But then when you look at what's needed to actually deliver seats going forward, and you say, okay, well, there's a large electronics HMI need, we're not going to build that organically, certainly. So it's a gap for us. So finding a good partner that meshes with you both from a technological standpoint, but also just from I mean, they were a great part of the team, the LG team. So we really got along well. Really enjoy seeing them, outside of this project. But they were a big part of how do we deliver some of the elements that round the story out that aren't seating related too. So in some cases, we did a full vehicle, and we're not ever going to be in the business of trying to make big monitors that are part of a seat. We're not going to be creating some of the touchscreen electronics to control the seats. We don't even make a lot of the elements of a more sophisticated control module like we worked on with Omron Nidec. So those folks all came into play. Sometimes they work. Sometimes that works out really well, but sometimes you're bringing in big companies that have a lot of interests on the outside, and there's places where they may actually be. They might compete in certain areas, so we have to be sensitive to that as well.
That's pretty interesting. And I'm just very curious now. Means normally when we design, let's say as a designer designs any project, they understand what is in the crosshair, what are the needs we are going to solve, and you try to solve it for that persona. Means you showed at least 3 personas, you selected one, and you went forward. I know as an Adient or any tier one supplier, you or anybody will always be producing concepts or strategic marketing concepts like Clover to finally go and meet the needs of the OEMs. But the OEMs are one and many. There are, let's say, everyday bread and butter OEMs. Some of them are luxury ones. How do you think about placing a design like this with that category? Means how do you aim which one to bring in the crosshair, and then how you go on selling it?
Yeah, well, with something specific like this, and again, this is really the last. We've not ventured down this path a whole lot in recent years in terms of the whole kind of case, the connected, autonomous, shared, and electrified. Electrified is maybe a little bit of a different story, but when we do something like this, we spend time with our customers, understanding what their needs are up front. So part of the research that we did was really going out and asking questions. What do you need? And at the time that we were doing a lot of the research, there were a lot of startups, especially out on the West Coast, who were really trying to think about things a little differently. So we wanted to make sure we were addressing needs for both our traditional customers who were looking at this space and sorting out what do we go do. We're talking to some of these startup customers that were really trying to break the mold, and because they're coming at it from a standpoint of really nothing to lose, because they're new to the market, and really have even sometimes a little more freedom than those of us who spend more time on the traditional side of the marketplace. But we would take this to them as a problem in the beginning, ask some questions to make sure we're solving problems that are going to matter to them. And then when it's done, we circle back and we build this so everyone can experience the product in the end. So they can get in and understand where we're going. And with a lot of the OEMs, there's so much focus on just trying to figure out how to get the technology to work to make the car drive itself. And we as experts in seating wanted to make sure we're being a good partner to them by providing solutions like this in the end. But since then we've been focused on all kinds of. There's a lot of other areas of focus. What do EVs do to us in terms of seating? We've a lot of effort put into cost and mass, which is always a need for our customers to try to reduce cost. And those of us who buy cars hopefully applaud our the OEMs for doing that, because it's getting harder and harder to afford a car anymore. So
That's pretty right. It's getting heavier and heavier and expensive too. I love the Clover name, by the way. As you showed the layout, now it becomes evident why it is the Clover, kind of an four zone kind of an elements too. But any particular design journey with the Clover that helped Adient differentiate itself from any other sitting competitors? Means what's also that one of the aims? And if yes, what was it?
yeah, of course. I mean, we all, Adient and all of our competitors, we're always trying to make sure that we have a differentiator for what we're doing, that we have unique selling points for the products that we offer. And in some cases, people would ask questions about the Clover. When can we? When would you be ready with these technologies? And the short answer was we could do it now. There was nothing in the vehicle that was so far out that we couldn't do it right away. It's just finding the right environment to click that with, and that was where that's where we're still keeping an eye on things. But based on the last slides that I showed, the horizon for the readiness of the self-driving technology has pushed out, and the shared market has been curtailed by a pandemic. So
It's interesting juxtaposition right now. Two points that came out. One you said about short answer was yes. Everything that you showed was, let's say, feasible to do it in a near time frame, and that's always good in a way to make sure the cash flow keeps in place. But we started a discussion with talking about invoking Sidmead, and Sidmead was always way ahead. So coming back to the world of just concept development, or just trying to design vehicles that are way ahead as a future scenario, have we as an automotive industry lost that way far reaching kind of an positioning that used to create dreams for kids to eventually be an industrial designer?
um, I would say no. How far out we can think, there's a point where you need to kind of balance out the kind of futuring of where the industry is going with the way things will look in the future. For us, when we put something like this together, we don't want to, I don't want to put a property in front of a customer, get them excited about it, and then tell them, well, just kidding, I can't really do that for you. So I want to make sure that anything we're showing to our customers or publicly, that these are things that Adient has confidence in, and if we have the right business model built around any of these, that we can go deliver it. The technology is not going to be anything that holds us back. Now, that all being said, there's all the stuff that I'm not showing you. There's all kinds of things going on within Adient, and I'm sure our customers are the same, where we're really trying to look out those next few generations to be prepared for where our portfolios need to go.
Absolutely, I completely understand that not everything can be shown in the public domain, and apart from influencing customers too, I think just any development of an internal industrial design team also, we all have to keep on pushing our own designers up to the envelope, and again eventually come back and do meaningful solutions as such too. A couple of questions coming in. Ben has a couple of questions. Has COVID changed the long-term view on shared mobility from an in-cabin design perspective?
Yes. Yeah, and some of the things that we were actually starting to look at that even when we did this vehicle. So the seating surfaces I mentioned were coated in an antimicrobial, anti-soil solution. We designed everything so they could be easily removed and cleaned. There was basically a trash recycling bin that was a part of it, and there was also a place where wipes could be dispensed within the vehicle. So if someone did want to wipe down their area, they could do that. In addition, there were things that we could could have built in, but as a part of a demonstrator wasn't necessary. But using UV for cleaning of microbes, because at this time we didn't have a pandemic, but there was a growing concern that antibiotics weren't working any longer. So that was part of our rationale between how do you get a higher level of acceptance with a shared economy, at the same time, giving people the feeling of safety and security, outside of just seatbelts and airbags and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, because right now, literally, they're still through going this hopefully, last few months of COVID before the vaccines come more commonplace. That will
Right.
still be a pretty big element in the minds to see, because as you said, means the ride hailing, ride sharing industry is at a complete different kind of an, I would say, station, and maybe only time will tell how that's going to unfold out, unless because I think the collaborations have to be done from the other industries also, right? The public transportation, the bus transportation, the transit transportation, or where you are depends on a urban downtown. It might be again bicycle based or things like that. So this is just one of the, I would say, options on the table. There might be something else coming into. As Adient, are you also providing seatings to this other public transportation worlds, or is it just passenger vehicles, Thomas?
Our main focus at Adient is for passenger vehicles, right? So we work directly with our OEM customers to deliver those seats. Adient has a joint venture called Adient Aerospace with Boeing, where we make airline seating. So that's a little different. And that was one of the interesting connections that we made, because when you look at the airline industry and you look at how a service provider may operate a vehicle like Clover, there were some crossovers that I think the airline industry is a little further ahead of us on. The buyer furnished equipment, so there's a potential that an Uber or Lyft would buy a vehicle shell from one place, outfit it according to their brand, the way airlines do, swapping out of interiors. So, obviously an airframe lasts a whole lot longer than the interior. So during the life of a plane, you can see changes over every, 3 to 5 to potentially longer periods of time to keep those planes fresh and keep the experience fresh for people.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting business model. The entire airline industry, one as such. Another question from Erica is more in this again the COVID world also, or pandemic world, I would say. Have you considered specific air filtration solutions to reduce airborne pathogens?
Yes, yeah. There's some of that is ongoing with us. From a technology standpoint, what we go to develop versus what we work with a potential partner out there to integrate into something like a seat. And this is where we have to be smart about how we spend our time with innovation. So what really things that we could put into a seat, does it really make sense to put that there, or is that something you do at a full cabin level? I could put a little UV light at the bottom of a headrest to flash all the bugs and kill them from a headrest, but does it make more sense to put that in the headliner of a vehicle? So we want to, that's why it's important for us to make sure we're solving the right problems for our customers. So, but yes, that is ongoing. Filtration is
Right.
part of that. Yes.
It's another question from Ben. How does haptics fit into where in-cabin design is going forward?
In some ways, haptics will kind of continue on as a important part of, and I'm assuming that means that kind of just general haptic feedback, but from a haptic standpoint, from a haptic feedback standpoint, those are out there now. Lane departure warnings that give you a little vibration to let you know you're kind of moving in and out. But some of the level 2 and 3 systems within vehicles now are kind of taking care of that on their own. But I know my car, if I drift a little too close to the edge of the lane, the steering wheel starts starts buzzing. So within a seat, there's certain things that you can do as well. But in terms of just touch and feel haptics, we deal with that as well all the time. A nice feeling fabric or leather really can make or break a design, because that's what you're interfacing with the most within the seat. Hopefully that answers the question.
Hopefully. Another question that's a little bit different, but still a pretty interesting question from Jason. How is academia keeping up with the progress of tech and industry standards as it pertains to the mobility seating design?
I'm sorry, how is what?
How is academia keeping up with the progress? So if you are doing something over here, how are you making sure you get that kind of an informed students working in the industry right now, but ready for the industry right now?
Yeah, that's one of those things really interesting right now because, again, students who are especially coming out of the schools right now, are growing up in a very different environment than I can say that I did. And, I think in a lot of cases, we're seeing a lot of good students coming out. They're very sophisticated in terms of their approach. They're sophisticated in terms of their level of knowledge, and the other aspect of that is, we're really kind of, as a global economy, we're approaching this from a very broad perspective. The next person working in our studio could be coming from China or India or South Africa. So, who knows where in the world. It's not necessarily the way it has been, and that's creating a really nice overall approach within studios themselves, because there's such a diverse kind of thinking going on. So, but I'd say they're keeping up quite well. Whether you're talking about an MIT, Stanford type of approach to things we see out of even local schools like University of Michigan and or the specific design schools. I mean, I would say the level of sophistication that we're seeing from students is much higher.
I think what you say is right. It's about making sure the students are learning not just the mechanics of what to do, but the way they connect the different dots, the way they think laterally, and try to solve the problems or find opportunities based on where they are. So as they come out of the college, come out of their first junior term or the second junior term, whatever they are surrounded with in the ecosystem, how they make sense of it, and then make sure what needs to be done at that time. And it will always be designing with the structure rather than designing for the grammar. That makes it more sense.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to relate to that, I think one of the things that's really interesting when you're putting together teams to take on challenges like this is to really be looking at not just the skill sets that go into it, but the way people think. Honestly, I am a nonlinear thinker. Anybody who works with me will tell you right away that, yeah, he is not a linear thinker, which is really good for me in terms of connecting dots and seeing relationships between things that might not be easy to see, but then sometimes just basic step-by-step storytelling is not where, my brain doesn't function that exact same way. It takes more energy from me. So pairing myself with people who do have that capability and really pulling them in and then thinking about that same thinking that same way when we build teams, that we have a nice mix really does help us arrive at good solutions. So yep. Sorry for interrupting.
You're right. The proper mix of the multidisciplinary team and then making sure creating some beauty between them. A question from Jason: when designing for projects that are, let's say, 5 years out, how are you able to negotiate IP rights and work with other brands?
When it's in and of ourselves, it's just a typical, when we have an idea, there's a process we go through when we have an idea. We want to first know that somebody else didn't beat us to the punch, that it is a unique idea. I don't want to go invest a lot of time and effort into something that is a technology somebody else owns, that's for sure.
Mhm.
But when we talk about if we're partnering with someone, that does it creates a really unique situation if you are out there partnering with another company and you come up with a really cool idea. It's kind of like if you had you and I, Jivak, bought a cottage up north, and you wanted to paint it green, and I wanted to paint it white, and
Go green, go white. You knew that.
I know I figured I'd get you there, but I think you'd be okay with either one of those. But there might be things where it's like, well, no, it's my weekend to mow the lawn, and I didn't do it, and all of a sudden, you get these little weird conflicts, and when you talk about companies trying to manage their way through intellectual property together, it does get really complicated. It doesn't mean that it can't be done. It doesn't mean that, especially when the relationships are good and solid, that it's actually not a good thing to go do that. But at the same time, it drives the legal teams crazy.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Uh, some of them are pretty difficult all to wrestle. But as you said, is those teams have done these things so many times in and out that they certainly find a way out too. Couple of things more. I think one thing is we might have touched that underlying current, but if you see some of the bigger trends happening in the market, the sustainability one is pretty strong and upcoming. So how do you, I mean, again, sustainability itself has so many different dimensions on it right now, but especially in the world of mobility and foam and fabrics or this right now means single-use plastic is saving mankind species, as simple as that. Last year we were completely gung-ho about single straws, and now we are using single-use masks, and we will still be using it. But coming back to the world of sustainability, what do you think uh, should be the proper way to go forward? Is there a ask for it out in the market? And if
Yeah,
not, what would be the right way to push it for the betterment of humanity?
and I think when you talk to us as a supplier, obviously we've had an interest in that. As long as I've been doing this job, sustainability has been a part of the equation. The question is whether we can do this at a economical level, and then there's also things that kind of can come into conflict with the sustainability story. So if we talk about um, you know electric vehicles and just moving people around, uh, there's uh, there's needs that are driven from an electric vehicle. So if you want to get better range, so you're using less energy to move people from point A to point B, you could want to go to a lightweight solution. However, a lot of those lightweight solutions may not be super eco-friendly. Some of the composites that are out there, it's a one and done. You make these parts with this conglomerate of different materials, and it's kind of, what do you do with it outside of throw it into a landfill after that? So unless you like skiing on landfills, that's probably not a great story. So there's always this balancing act. So we use tools to try to make sure we're prioritizing those things correctly, and a lot of that falls into relationships with our customers too, and which way do they want to go with these things. Weight saves a few years ago, I remember certain customers saying, $5 a kilo is what, things are worth if we can save that. But it's like, that doesn't really end up being the case. There's other elements of sustainability that, again, I think we're ready for, but it's always got to be you got to look at the big picture. So some of this kind of carbon footprint, big picture approach to sustainability is where things are going. and even looking at, I think GM did a really nice job at CES this year with some of their announcements. You know, their keynote address really focused on where they were going from a sustainability standpoint. It was really pretty fun to watch. So
that's pretty amazing. I know we're almost coming to the end of the time. This has been really great, really helpful, and there are still many questions that hopefully we can get to eventually. Maybe at least a couple of them more. Coming back to you as a designer, and you said last 32 years and more, you've been in this design world. So, Thomas, what is your design philosophy? What have been some of the principles and guideposts that have led you as a designer?
you know, I think the curiosity is like the one of those things that really can be a driver for people, and not just as a designer, really. You know, if you have you know, your CEOs and leaders that have this curious bent to them, that's really something that helps propel things forward, because you're always digging and always looking. You know, other parts of, you know, designers that sometimes make us a little bit miserable is we're just not happy with the status quo. You know, being kind of content is tough, and sometimes there's that curiosity and lack of being content with what's out there today. It helps, you know, really helps propel things forward. So um but collaboration is a huge one. You know, not thinking that I've got it solved, not thinking that uh you know, Jivak, you and I working together on something, we're going to come up with something better and something neither one of us would have ever come up with on our own. You know, a collaboration is huge in terms of how we should be approaching design, just as just a value of what we are. There's, you know, again, creativity kind of plays into all of that as well. So it's really tough to nail down, you know, a specific characteristic. I think, you know, there's, you know, if I'm talking to, you know, somebody who's you know, prospective designer for us, there's a few things that I'm looking for, and you know, some of the things I just rattled off are what I like to see. But I also want to see somebody who's really kind of coming at things differently than I am.
That's
I don't want any more me around. It's
but that me also is important part of the equation too. Where do you seek for inspiration?
you know, this sounds like a little bit of a cop out, but it, just digging, you know, giving yourself time to kind of dig through something. Whether it's like listening to a podcast you might not have listened to before, roaming the internet into some topic that's really interesting and seeing someone's perspective on that. We do, you know, within Adient, our team does a little, well, we call it a cigar night. Nobody actually has a cigar really, but we just all get together and don't talk. You know, the one rule is we try not to talk about work if we can. Just talk about what's going on, and sometimes those are really super inspirational conversations, and we come up with some crazy stuff during that time.
I like that. Cigar nights with no cigars. That's pretty interesting. Are you still doing that in the world of COVID via Zoom meetings?
Yeah, we do it. Yeah, we do it. We've got one coming up tonight. So yeah, we do that every other week. We get together and we use Teams at Adient. So we just get in, we all log in and just you know, in the evening, usually around 7 o'clock, and just try to have a good time, see what happens.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And do this as a global team or still a localized team?
Just because of time zones, we do it as a local team. But there's, I would say, team in Americas. So within, you know, a few time zones from here. But we do, you know, we do the same thing when we start traveling again. Hopefully that'll pick up more globally.
Yeah, I think we are just there, but maybe I should take one more question. I think it's from Pete. The Pete I know. I'm going to paraphrase his question. You obviously do consumer research in Adient. how do you do it a little bit differently for a fleet operator? So the differences between a personal vehicle and a fleet vehicles, do you do them? How do you
It
use the
was,
learnings for the fleet operators?
yeah, that was a little tougher because, sometimes, when we're talking about projects like this, the conditions, having, a bunch of vehicles running, autonomous vehicles running around operated by a service provider, you couldn't just go up and survey somebody who was doing that. There wasn't much of that out there. So we split it up. We did talk to people, Uber and Lyft users and drivers. Every time I can, I get into a vehicle like that, and then the driver probably goes nuts with me asking questions. So some of it's just off the cuff and collecting knowledge that way. But we do a lot of our own internal research. Some of the primary research, we partner with companies to go do that. It's been really, really hard with COVID, though. I'll tell you that. Really tough to be able to do that primary research. And we've put the brakes on a few things because we don't want to waste time and effort. We just can't get knowledge.
Awesome. Any last minute words of wisdom for our audience before I will have to welcome the next speaker in?
No, but I do really appreciate the opportunity to come and join you today, and it's good seeing you again. And maybe we'll get you in on some of our cigar nights sometime soon.
Awesome. I like it. A cigar with a no cigar night. I am always in. Thank you once again, Thomas, and feel free to unmute and unvideo yourself, and
thank you.
Then observe the show from the sidelines too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Well, yeah. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that was Thomas Gould from Adient, and I think it was a pretty amazing lay of the land of what is happening in the world of interiors. No matter what, the exteriors of the vehicles are the emotive part of it, but no matter what we stay, as much as we stay in any vehicle, that will be insides. And now going forward in this, I would say, not world of pandemic, but going forward to see what might be the changes coming in that world is pretty important and pretty mysterious still. I would say still intriguing area to see how everything is still going to unfold out.